Hi everyone, this is Marianne and welcome to my channel. In one of my previous videos, I showed this Bevania Splendor gel paper that is 160 GSM in a white color. It came in this pack of 8.5 by 13 inches, which in the Philippines we call long size. We also have what we call the short size, which is 8.5 by 11, and in the US it is called the US letter size. Now, I like this paper so much that I am using it for my daily planner pages, and I will link that video in the description box for you. But then after a while, I realized, what if I can make hand-stitched notebooks using this paper? So I decided to try it out. My initial misgiving was rooted in the thickness and the stiffness of the paper. Let me just show you. Now, I don't have the caliper that people use to measure the thickness of very thin paper, so I don't know how many millimeters this is, but you can tell it is very thick, not just by how it looks and feels, but also in how it sounds and behaves when you flick the corner of the paper. Let me put on the original sound here so you can see for yourself. Did you hear that? It is definitely thick and definitely stiff. This is not the 100 GSM or even the 120 GSM paper that I am so familiar with. It is a very beautiful paper, very luxurious, and it is very smooth and very even. It has no texture at all, and it works perfectly with fountain pens. So let me show you. I'm using this Pelikan M400 White Tortoise. It has an extra fine nib. It is my favorite fountain pen. I've had this for a very long time, and right now I have it loaded with a Ferris wheel press ink in the color buttered popcorn. This ink is a gift from my cousin Peachy. I have a video about this ink, which I will also link down below. This ink is a work of art from the box to the bottle and to the ink itself. It is very well behaved and very reliable, and the color is so beautiful. Here is a closer look at the writing sample that we just made. As you can see, the ink shows up very richly on the paper. And I do admit that this looks darker to me because maybe the ink has been on the pen for a while. You can compare the color of this ink with my first ink swatch video of this ink if you're curious. The link is below, but I do like it when it has become darker. There is certainly noticeable shading on the paper. Shading is what we call it when some of the lines are darker than the others, like this one right here, and right here, and right here. The ink pools in some parts of the lines, and when the ink dries, they dry darker on those places. And at the back, you can see that there is absolutely no bleed through, and I cannot see any ghosting at all. You can see nothing on the back of the paper. It is like an entirely fresh sheet. And let us have another look at the front. The shading is so beautiful. Shading is my absolute favorite feature of fountain pen inks because it shows that we have written with a fountain pen. Without the shading, it will look like we have written with an ordinary felt-tipped pen, and I do not like that. I want the shading. And this paper shows the shading really well. It shows absolutely nothing at the back. I find this so fascinating. And for good measure, I also tried out this paper with even wetter media. These are the Zig Clean Color Real Brush Pens. I've had these for a few years and they're still juicy. I have made videos about these pens, these brush pens, and I will link a few of them down below. These are watercolor pens that are water-based, obviously, and I like these pens because on the right paper, they show that very distinctive and very beautiful uneven watercolor effect. I have used these pens to try out papers before, and I will link one video comparing two different papers in the description box. But here on this Bevania 160 GSM paper, the final effect is very similar with what you would expect from a watercolor. Not exactly the same, but very similar. It looks uneven, and when it dries, you can even see the strokes that were made. That is a characteristic of watercolor. For comparison, let us use this other paper that I have. This is the Midori MD paper, and this works very well with fountain pens and also with the Zig Clean Color Real Brush Pens that I have used it with for many, many years. And as you can see, the effect and appearance of the pens on the Midori MD paper is very, very similar to the effect and appearance of the same pens on the 160 GSM Bevania paper. Now let us spice things up and make things even wetter. I have here a spray bottle of distilled water, and I will just spray the brush pen directly, and then also spray a little bit on the paper on the 160 GSM Bavania and play around with the pens. As you can see, with even more water, the shading and the watercolor effect is even more noticeable. I think it's very beautiful. Now let us try the same experiment with the Midori MD paper. Spray the brush pen with the water, spray a little bit more water on the paper, and then play around with it. And it looks like the effect of this method on the paper is very similar as well. It looks so pretty. And for the back, still no bleed through and no ghosting on the 160 GSM Bavania. Even with a darker brush pen right here, I don't really see anything. As for the Midori MD paper, there is no bleed through either, but there is a tiny bit of ghosting, which is understandable because this is thinner paper. I don't know exactly, maybe it's 80 GSM or 85, I can't be sure. But of course, when you use a wetter media on paper, the paper will always end up warping to some degree, but I think that is part of the charm of using wet media on paper. So I really wanted to try making this into a notebook because wouldn't it be so cool to have this paper in a bound notebook with a lot of pages, and you can even put it inside a very nice notebook cover? So that was the goal. I tried it and I did my best. It was not easy to fold and stitch because of the thickness. I mean, it is very thick. It is just 40 GSM away from becoming cardstock because cardstock is 200 GSM. And the paper did ruin my bone folder when I was folding the paper. See here, the plastic of this bone folder is not very hard. So over time, as I use this, the plastic wears down quite smoothly, but it takes a lot of time to wear down the plastic. But this 160 GSM paper actually cut through the plastic. It made nicks in the plastic. I was using this to crease and fold down the middle of the paper, so it is the edge of the folded paper that's doing this to the plastic. And I switched to a different bone folder, also made of a similar plastic, and in here you can actually see the nicks or the notches that the paper has made on the plastic. That is how thick and stiff the paper is. It was a challenge. It was not easy to handle this paper because it is close to cardstock, like I said, but at least these bone folders are not very expensive. But if you have recommendations for a bone folder that is made of a more sturdy material, please let me know in the comments. Well, I persevered and I did it. I made it. It was just a little bit more labor intensive than usual, and the signatures are made up of 3 sheets of paper instead of the usual 5 sheets of paper that I use when making the signatures for the Elias paper notebooks. And by the way, a video of the Elias notebooks will also be linked down below. This notebook with a 160 GSM Bevania has 17 signatures, and each signature is made up of 3 sheets of paper, so that means this notebook has 204 pages or 102 leaves. And here it is, the 160 GSM Bevania Splendor Gel Paper in a handmade bound notebook. And because I used the same kind of binding method, this notebook will still lie reasonably flat and it will absolutely stay open on your writing surface. You just need to press down lightly on the middle and it becomes super flat and it will stay that way until you turn the page. Sometimes there's just a couple of sheets that sort of float upwards a little bit, but it will not bother you. I know a notebook that lies flat is important because I myself have had notebooks that, while I am writing on them, they close themselves over my hand like this. It is very annoying. It is like I am constantly fighting with my notebook. It is not an enjoyable writing experience. But this one here stays like that. And this is a feature of all of the notebooks that I make because they are bound using the same method. It is just the paper that is different each time. Now let me show you the spine. The spine is covered by a light gray fabric and it has 6 ridges because that is where the stitching is located. The binding is very strong. It will not come apart no matter how much you open and close the notebook. As for the size, this is only very slightly taller than an A5, but the width is A5, which is 148 millimeters. The height is 215 millimeters. Like I said, it is slightly taller than A5 because A5 height is 210 millimeters. Nevertheless, it can still fit inside a Hobonichi cousin cover. Now the Hobonichi Cousin is a planner that is standard A5 size, and here I have one cover. I actually bought this in February this year during the spring release, and I did film an unboxing, but I never got around to editing it and uploading it because I was very sick that time. This is the Hobonichi Petite Roses, and it comes with a matching handkerchief, which I also have, and I will film a review of these Petite Roses in a week or two, but for now I will use this cover to show you that the notebook fits inside it. And this is how you place any notebook inside a Hobonichi cover. You have to flip back the front and back covers like so, and then insert them into the front and back pockets of the cover at the same time, and then slowly nudge them into place. If you do it this way, you will not have to bend the notebook cover just to slot it into the pockets of the Hobonichi cover. And in this way, the notebook covers stay very, very straight. And because of the very sturdy binding of the notebook, you can actually flip the covers back this way and even fold the notebook back on itself, and the notebook will not come apart. Don't be afraid. It will be all right. See, it totally fits. And by the way, this notebook has the unique serial number of 531. And I really like the fit. It looks so perfect. And now for the notebook covers that are not for the Hobonichi cousin. I cannot say it will fit this notebook because like I said, it's slightly taller than A5, but I can vouch for the notebook absolutely being able to fit the Hobonichi cover. And these 2 giant pen loops here can be used as 2 separate pen loops to store 2 different pens, or they can also be used as a single pen loop if you use your pen as a closure, like this. One thing I have observed with this paper is that the notebook remembers where you opened it last. See here, it has that gap from where I last opened it, but that's because the paper is so thick and that gapping is temporary. It will not affect the functionality of the notebook at all. You can order this notebook from me using the Facebook link that I will leave in the description box. And that is the notebook using the 160 GSM white Bevania Splendor gel paper. Thanks for watching. Bye.